I want to begin, Arkan and John, with a question that kind of speaks to both of you, and I think it speaks to your expertise. So I want to go to the heart of our issue, what I think is one of the heart of our issue today. I want to talk about the link between economy and ecology, okay? And I see both of you, even though in your bio, John, we say that you're a chief economist. Also, Arkan, in reading your book, there's so much about the economy and how you see the economy through the lens of an indigenous keeper, wisdom keeper. So we have a deep imbalance between our economy and the Earth's ecology. I'm wondering if you both can explain, and you can figure out who wants to go first, but if you both can explain together what this imbalance is and how do we course correct and get on the right path. Again, the imbalance between our economy, the way we live capitalism today, and the Earth's ecology. Who wants to go first?
I would love John to go first.
Great.
Of course. Well, here I am in the Amazon rainforest of Ecuador, and this is a place where it really where the rubber hits the road, because this is a country that's considered to be one of the poorest in Latin America and also one of the most heavily populated. The Sierra, the mountain area, the Andean area, and coastal area, very, very heavily populated. Roughly a third of the country is the Amazon area, and that's one of the least densely populated places on the planet. And it has tremendous amounts of oil. Well, tremendous amounts by Ecuadorian standards, and it has a lot of oil that the oil companies covet. So there's a huge debate that goes on here, because in drilling for oil in the past, Texaco has had huge problems here. There was just an oil spill here on July 2nd, and yet people all over this country are really demanding of the president that they drill for oil because they say they need better education, better health care, and so on and so forth. So, and right now, Ecuador has one of the highest economic growth rates in Latin America. It also, after Venezuela, is the country in Latin America with the least foreign investment. The president of this country has done a magnificent job, really, in many respects, and yet he's also pushing to drill for oil. The indigenous people in the Amazon area are very opposed to having oil drilled there. So I'm sitting in a very much of a hot spot with this argument. This debate is going on all the time. Should we drill for oil and risk the environment, but help the economy, or should we not? And one of the things that I want to keep pointing out to people here is that in the past, in countries where oil has been exploited, usually the poor people and even the middle classes have not benefited at all. And Correa, the president of this country, says, yes, but that's been the case in countries that are non-democratic. Ecuador is a very democratic country. So this really, I hope, frames this. Being here in Ecuador, I'm really feeling this very, very strongly. It's an incredibly important debate and one we really have to take very seriously. And I'll stop now and let Arkan say a few words.
I know that, Arkan, in your book, you talk about that when the spiritual path and the economic path are aligned, then we have the right conditions. But when they're not, we don't. And you talk a lot about that around ecology and being in line with the earth. Can you go into that?
Yeah. From my point of view and the point of view of the wisdom of indigenous people, there was at some point in the history of humanity a split that happened between spirit and matter. And then this split actually happened in the minds of the people. There was a mind in the human beings dedicated to develop material well-being, and another mind dedicated to the issues of the heart and feelings and spirituality. And these two things were separated. So this separation has created a really big damage because it's a human culture that allows itself to have, if we want to say it in that way, a double life. You know, in one life we give ourselves permission to just take from the earth anything that can help us make profit, and in the other life we love our family and go to church. So this split and this separation is has been for a long time now giving permission to us humans to create a lot of destruction on earth without being responsible for it. So when the economy and spirituality are aligned, this split cannot happen, because actually economics and economic practices are a spiritual issue. Economics are about taking care of the production of goods and administrating the goods and make sure that everyone in society receives what they need, food and shelter and clothing, etc. And of course, when we make these goods, we have to take things from the source, which is Pachamama, Mother Earth. But this modern economy does not take care of the source. It just keeps taking and taking from her without protecting her or giving anything in return to her. So damaging the source is actually something not intelligent at all in our modern culture that claims to be so developed and so intelligent. Modern economy uses the source to create profit at the cost of damaging the source. So where are the profits going to come from when the source is all and completely damaged? The economy will just have to collapse, or we all may just have to all move to another planet. So it doesn't make sense. You know, a real economic system requires a spiritual wisdom and a spiritual awareness, so we can take care of the source that is giving us the goods that we need in order to have a good life. And that source is Pachamama. So in indigenous culture, when we, for example, if we want to build a house and we're going to cut trees and take rocks and move things from the earth, before we do that, we make an offering. And we only take what we need. We don't take more than that. And, the most important thing is the priority to have an economy that is connected to spirituality is to take care of the state of all life and the well-being of all life. And as we all know, modern capitalism and industry and commerce does never consider that. The first priority on the list is profit, and considering the well-being of all life, I don't know if it's even on the list. So it would be much better for all of us in the future of humanity and the well-being of all life if we put that well-being number one on the list. And if someone wants to put profit at number two on the list, it's okay, that's their choice. But the well-being of all life, the caretaking of the home where we all live and where many precious forms of life live, that should always be number one. And I see that there are many people, John amongst them, who are providing humanity with some solutions and some new ways of doing economic practices where that is the case, where the well-being of all life and the caretaking of Pachamama is number one on the list. And in order to do this, of course, looking at the wisdom of the ancient people, indigenous people who have done this for thousands of years, can be very, very useful. And I do recommend people to get some of the wisdom from the indigenous people.
Yeah, I'm hearing you use the word source a lot, and when you're talking just now, and I think about the word resource. Natural resource is what we call the earth now. It's a natural resource as opposed to something that is spiritual and sacred. And there's consequences to this perspective of natural resource. It just rolls out of our mouth like if it's natural, and yet what we mean when we say natural resource is something that we use that's disposable.
Exactly.
And there's consequences to that.
Yes, and we are seeing the consequences big time nowadays. This is time to change. We gotta change as soon as possible, or we're really going to, as you say, suffer some really severe consequences. The Earth is a living organism and is being damaged at a very high rate, and if we don't change our course and create an economic system that is sacred and considers the well-being of all life, that our children, the children of our children, are going to have a very hard time.
Yeah. And John, I'm curious about your coming in on this conversation around economy and sacred and the earth and source. Can you jump in a little bit and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd love to, and I really, really resonate with what Arkan said. And it's so beautiful with this, and that's really the challenge of our time. I think is how do we tie this together, bring in the spirituality. And the Indigenous people have always done an amazing job at that, at least up until they get corrupted by us.
Sean, I'm going to interrupt you for just one moment. We're having a slight hard time hearing you. If you could just speak up a little bit more.
Oh, okay. How's that? Is that better? Do I get closer?
That is. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We want to hear you. Thank you.
So, the Indigenous people have always been able to have their own type of economy and also really honor nature and the spirituality behind it. And I think where we need to go now, and I talk about this a lot in a book I'm writing now and also in lectures that I give, that we have really created what I would call a death economy. It's an economy that's to some extent, to a pretty large extent, based on killing people. Militarism. The United States budget is hugely biased toward militarism and also on destroying the earth, raping and pillaging the very resources that the economy depends upon. We need to move now into what I would call a life economy. And that's an economy that cleans up the pollution. I mean, we can create work, jobs around cleaning up the terribly polluted ocean. We know, for one thing, we've got to somehow deal with this radiation that's come out of Fukushima, but the oceans are polluted in many ways. The air is polluted, the Amazon's polluted, the oil spills here. There's a huge amount of economic work that could be done to clean up the pollution of the water, the earth, the air, and also to help starving people around the world feed themselves, to grow food more efficiently and store it and distribute it. We need to come up with new forms of energy. I mean, we all know we can create energy without using fossil fuels. There's so many ways that the people who talk about Tesla, well, there's a lot to that, and using magnetic fields, et cetera, and the new forms of transportation and communications and banking. There's so much that we can do to create a life economy, and that's an economy that would really reflect very much Indigenous values and the Indigenous way of life. Is to say, yeah, we have to eat, we have to feed ourselves, we have to have an economy, and yet we need to do it in a way that honors the earth and takes care of the earth. So I do believe that we can combine the two, and I'm advocating it all the time now. And just think, if we were to put our tax dollars or our consumer dollars toward supporting businesses that cleaned up pollution instead of creating pollution, that help starving people live better lives, et cetera. There's a tremendous opportunity here for us to move in this new direction.
Yeah, I just want to presence also to our listening audience that, and just to remember that John is calling from the rainforest of Ecuador, so your sound is a little off and on, and it goes in and out. But I'm amazed that we have you at all. So we can bear with it. So I just want to remind people that we're really lucky that we have anything at all. We have good picture. Sound is a little weak, but just if you stay present with the sound and be aware that, John, we are having a little problem because you're going in and out.
And Konda, yeah. If I could mention, I don't even have a computer or internet here. This is all being done through shamanic vibration.
I love it. I love it. Well,
this is the Shaman's Network.
Okay, speaking of shamans, the next question that I have for you, can you describe what a shaman is? That word is used so often now. You know, we hear it in North America a lot. This person's a shaman, that person's a shaman, or whatever. And, you know, I wonder really if either, I would love for both of you to chime into what essentially is a shaman? What does it mean? What does that word really mean? And what is the purpose of the shaman? What does the shaman give to us today in this world today?
Arkan, I think it's your turn to go first.
Arkan?
Well, I respect the use of that word because it's a word that helps people communicate a certain practice of earth-based spirituality and working with the spirits of nature. But in my language and in indigenous culture, this is a very new word for us. My understanding is the word shaman is originated in Siberia. And in anthropology, started using the word shaman to describe people who communicate with the invisible world, with the spiritual world, and to go to that world in order to find medicine and help for the problems of the people in this world. So, in a nutshell, that's what the understanding of what a shaman is. But I personally feel that it can be a bit misleading to only use that word, because indigenous people all over the world have different ways of doing that, and many different arts and medicines that they use, and there are different healers, medicine people, spiritual leaders who are specialized in different aspects of what it is to use spirituality and the help of the spiritual world in order to resolve problems down here on the human world. And so, for example, in Peru, where I come from, we just recently started hearing the word shaman. You can hear the word Paco, which means healer, Hampich, curandero, which is someone who works with plants, Pampa Misayo, Alto Misayo. Those are people who take care of big spaces, of big territories, and make sure that the earth is in balance in those big territories, including the people. So there are many different levels of work in indigenous cultures, and the word shaman can sometimes be too small or too narrow to really describe the potential of the human that we humans have in order to connect with the spiritual world, in order to take care of the earth and the human world.
Interesting, very interesting. John, what do you add to that?
Well, that's a beautiful definition. Thank you. And just for simplicity's sake, at workshops, I often say that I've worked with shamans all around the world over the past 50 years, starting with being here in the Amazon in the Peace Corps in 1968, when my life was saved by a shaman, and as a payment, he asked me to become his apprentice, and started back then. In all over the world, what I hear is that a shaman is a woman or a man who journeys to other worlds, as Arkan said, goes into the spiritual world, basically, but must use the power, energy, and wisdom received in those worlds, in that world, the journey to the other world, to affect change in this world, which may be healing other people, or maybe somehow impacting a community. The community knows the rivers are rising, it's time to move. Working with crop cycles, doing all kinds of things. At this point in time, it would be helping to, save the planet as we know it. And so a shaman is, again, a woman or a man who journeys to other worlds, uses the power, wisdom, and energy from those worlds to affect change in this world. A lot of people journey to other worlds, priests, meditators, so the shaman must use he or she gets in these worlds to affect change in this world. And within that definition, for something tradition, so an Achua shaman that I'm going to be visiting in the next couple of days does those things, but also has tremendous in plants, sacred plants, medicinal plants, and so on and so forth, because he lives in the jungle where there's lots of plants and knows chants. In the Andes, they work with fire a lot because of the volcanoes and the stones, the sacred stones from the volcanoes. And in the deserts of around shamans do a lot with the winds of the desert and the sands and so forth. So there's all these things around it. And also, I think modern shamans have to go from the standpoint of psychology, because that's what our people relate to being able to talk in certain ways and communicate. So within that broad definition, there are so many aspects that relate to every individual culture. I hope you can hear me okay. Is this any better?
Yeah, it comes through, words come through, it sounds some muffled as well, but I think I certainly am getting the gist of it. And yeah, we're pretty much getting the gist of what you're saying here. I have I'm
wondering if I turn off my camera and just use the microphone.
That's an idea. What do you think about that, Leah? Should we turn off the camera and just go for audio?
I just did it. Is that any better now? Does that sound better?
Yeah, it does sound better.
All right, let's try that.
Okay, we're going to try that. So we're just happy to have you here, John, calling in from the Amazon in Ecuador. I have one other question for you, John. Your book, Shape-Shifting. I've read all your books, and this one is particularly interesting. I actually read it when I was in Ecuador myself. And as we talk about shamanism, I'm curious if you can, for those who missed reading the book, I'm wondering if you can give just a brief understanding of shape-shifting and how it's useful, and how is it useful in today's world, and is it something that is just for special people? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's certainly not just for special people. We're all special people. So I guess they could say, yes, for special people, that's all of us. And it's really about using energy to change anything. So we are all composed of energy. We're composed of air and energy, basically. And what do we do with that is what's important. And so, if you consider that we're 99.999% air, a lot of people think water, but that water is actually H2O, and 0.00001% probability, which is what the quantum physics tell of energy. It's how we direct that energy. And so if something's really upsetting you, you're angry, you can pound on the floor, you can get really upset, you can yell at people, and that's going to accomplish something. But if instead you turn that energy around and look at how you can focus it in ways that accomplish what you want, that's shape-shifting. I'll give an example. I've been very angry for a long time at what what corporations do, what my country does around the world, and I used to get very upset and use that in very destructive, sometimes self-destructive ways. Now I have a lot of fun. I'm still angry, but I write books. I'm on this program. I travel around the world speaking about these things. And I think it's a lot more effective. I tell in Shape-Shifting about how the shaman saved my life in the Amazon. It basically saved my life by one night taking me on a journey where I saw that it wasn't the food that was killing me as I thought it was, and the chicha, the beer that I was drinking out there, I thought that was killing me. What I realized is it was the voice of my parents telling me that those foods would kill me. I've been brought up in very conservative ways. And as soon as I understood that the Shwa and Achwa were eating those same foods and drinking that drink, and they were very healthy, I saw very clearly in that one night that I was dying. I couldn't keep any food down. I was sick all the time. But it wasn't the food that was killing me. It was a mindset. And so I went through a radical shape shift by understanding that. And I changed the whole energy around it. So again, the energy, every time I ate grubs coming out of a log, which is a favorite food of the Shwa, you reach in and pull out these swimming grubs. You drink this beer that's made by women chewing and spitting the manioc root, and then it ferments. It's actually very healthy. But I had this mindset every time I did that it would make me sick, so it was. So shape-shifting is all about how we apply energy and ideas. And now we need to do it on a global level. That's why I talk about shape-shifting out of a death economy into a life economy. That's a very short version.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, when you're talking, I'm thinking about all the activists. I would suspect that most of the people on this call are Earth activists, right? That's why they're drawn to even to listen, to be here with us all, with you, John, and Arkan. And my question is this. We are Earth activists. In our hearts, we care deeply. But what do we need to do to even deepen our connection to the Earth? What tools do we need in our toolkit? Because I think sometimes that as activists, like you were just talking about, John, sometimes there's anger. I look at I was just up in British Columbia where the tar sands is going on, and I looked at the First Nations people there who are handling such a terrible, terrible situation with such grace and such still love in their heart. And I think as the activists that I know who are not living in situations as nearly as bad as that, or on different reservations in North America, are angry and having a hard time really connecting still. I'm not sure that the connection with the Earth is as deep, because there's something there that the Indigenous First Nations people have that I think we're looking for. And I'm wondering, and Arkan, maybe if you can begin the discussion on this, what is it that we need to deepen our connection?
We need to get rid of all the intermediaries. We need to connect directly with her, with Pachamama, with the Earth, without any intermediaries. And this experience of connecting directly with the Earth, without intermediaries, is an experience, is a spiritual experience. It's an experience that happens with an open heart. So, for example, in the modern culture, when people approach the Earth, they have intermediaries called concepts. The idea or the concept that this may be this or this may be that. Our own previous educated understanding of what things may be or may mean is always an intermediary that doesn't allow us to have a full, direct connection with the spirit of Mother Earth. Believe me, I'm sure many people who are here in this conversation have had the experience, and I have it very often. When you directly connect with the Earth, you feel something. It's a beautiful, powerful experience to be touched by her and to feel her so close and so present. And you develop a relationship. You fall in love with her. It becomes a very, very close relative, very close to your heart. It really becomes your mother. You start calling her mother, not only because other people call her mother, but because you feel her being your mother and taking care of you and feeling content and happy every time that you bring her a gift. So Indigenous people have the possibility that you described before of keeping that connection, because we are not driven by intellectual concepts in order to access the spirit of the Earth and of all the beings and spiritual powers that are part of the Earth. We just get very close to her, get in the water, touch the ground, hug the tree, do a ceremony, and be in deep connection with her. So I thank you for the question, because I feel that to remember this memory that has been forgotten could make a very big difference. I have sometimes seen, for example, children from different cultures and different parts of the world being invited to have this direct connection with the Earth through the heart and through feeling, without any previous concepts or intellectual education, and they love it. From any part of the world, right away they like it and they want to do more of that. So I feel that the world really needs to return to a direct connection, a heart connection with the Earth that can make people feel what they are doing when they are causing damage to her. You know, there are so many people causing the damage with big machines, with industries, with, you know, creating profit from, as you said, exploiting the resources. And I'm sure if those people, those are most of them good people. I cannot say they have bad intentions or they are bad people. There is a cultural problem, which is that they cannot feel. And if they could feel, many of them would change. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't do it if you really feel it. But that's what has happened with modern culture, is the split that I was talking about earlier between the head and the heart. We need to heal that split. We need to go to the places where people are being trained to be CEOs and let them know that it's okay to feel, that it's okay to have a heart. When you have a board of directors or when you make business plans, that there's no problem having a heart and feeling and considering the well-being of all life, that actually that would make you much happier than just making millions of dollars very quickly. You know, the notion of success is the big shape-shifting. We need to shape-shift from a notion of success that is individual to a collective notion of success. Something like, in order to be happy, we all have to be happy, because if I'm happy alone, I will never be really happy. Who is really happy alone, you know?
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I have many more questions, and yet we're at that point where it's time for others to ask questions, and I have to share the stage. So I'm ready to do that. So listening audience, it's now your turn. I know that you're probably bubbling up with questions, so I'm going to remind you to raise your hand. You can raise your hand how Leah showed you on this platform. And you also have the option to post a question in the comments section, where you can write your question into the comment section, and Leah will receive that question. So if anybody has any questions right now for either of these wonderful wisdom keepers, now's the time to do that. And so, again, either raise your hand on the platform or write in the comment section. And Leah will direct all the questions. Leah, do you have anybody?
We do. We have a question from Lushwala Tish. Pardon me if I didn't pronounce your name correctly.
It's Louisa Tish.
Louisa Tish.
Yes. Hi, baby. How you doing?
Hey, how are you? Good to hear you.
I tuned in
You want to tell everybody where you're calling from? I know where you are, but let everybody know where you're calling
from. From Oakland, California.
Great. What's your question, Tish?
Well, you know, it's more of a request for assistance. Everything that the speakers have said about us reconnecting with Mother Earth and making our choices and decisions from that place is absolutely right. The problem that I'm thinking about right now is, especially in the African American community, the thing that I call plantation punch and urbanization, where we had a relationship to the land in Africa, but through the slave period, that relationship was wounded because we were not able to relate to it in our own way, and it was under oppression. And so sometimes I find that a lot of our young people are afraid to go into the forest, you know, will barely go to the park, or being from the South, sometimes they even associate having a garden with being backwards, you know. People have been so urbanized that we really need help healing that so that we can increase the number of spiritual activists that we have. If there's any recommendations or anybody has an experience with that can help me, I would be grateful.
Wow, that's a great observation, and such a deep one that I would like to see if either of our speakers have anything. I also have one thing to say about that. But Arkan and John, do you have any reflection on that question or that statement?
Go ahead, John, since I was the last one.
I'd love to hear your comments, Konda.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I have to say is that there is a new book that just came out literally 2 weeks ago, I think, by a woman named Carolyn Finney, who is a associate professor at UC Berkeley, African-American woman in the geology department, natural resources. It's called Black Faces, White Spaces. And it's I just got the book and I'm just reading it and looking at that whole history of the African-American experience of how nature, exactly what you're talking about, Tish, and how where we still are with nature, though, and the places that relationship, how it's gone through such trauma, and then coming back through that trauma and how we regain all of that. So I wanted to present that book as something that I highly recommend. Again, it's called Black Faces, White Spaces by Carolyn Finney. But, yeah, I think that there's many people, histories have been challenged around environment, and where we were all connected to the earth, and then urbanization happens and has separated us. And so all the things that when I hear Arkan talk and I hear John talk, John's in the rainforest of Ecuador right now. How do we get through the historical traumas that have happened and living in an urban environment, find that deep connection to earth? How do we do that?
Yeah. When you probably know that there is these flowers that live in the desert, and they can look really dry and just sitting there in the desert for a very long time. It could be, I don't know, it could be many months. I heard some of them, it can be a couple of years or more. And suddenly there's a little rain, and they get a drop of water in them or a few drops of water, and they come to life again. So these flowers, they don't die. They keep the memory of what they are meant to be. They keep the memory of what they really are. And just a few drops of water, and all what they are comes back to life. It is the same with us, with us humans. And thank you so much for the question. That was very, very important question. People who were uprooted from the forest, or who have trauma related to being connected to the land as they were exploited to produce from the land, etc. Or people who live in urban areas for a long time and very detached from the earth have a harder time, like those flowers that I'm talking about. It's like they have not been receiving that water. They have not been receiving something that can activate a memory that can bring it all back to life. The good news, and this is what we need to remember in order to resolve this problem that was mentioned, the very good news is nobody ever loses that memory. The body carries it. We have been carrying it for thousands of years, for generation after generation. The body carries the memory of being part of the earth. So people, in order to remember, need to be exposed to what in my metaphor would be the water. People need to be taken, not only to a little garden or to read a book about nature. People need to be taken to the beach, to the forest, to the mountain, and in order to receive enough nourishment from the earth so that memory starts sprouting again and the flower starts opening again. In my experience, what I have seen from situations like this many times, people who come to our place in New Mexico after being in the city for a long time, it normally takes around 4 days. After 4 days, most people begin opening up like that flower I described, and then they don't want to leave. The first days they have resistance, they are still connected to their cell phones and their computers, and just want to run back to the city. But if you can do it more than 4 days, then there is a change.
That is such a great, beautiful question and such a beautiful answer. That's wonderful. We need to figure out what those drops of water are. They come in different forms. Thank you so much, Tish, for the question, and Arkan for your answer. Leah, do we have any? We have other questions. I see we have a lot of questions. Do you want to serve another?
We do.
One?
Our next one is from Jai Cross.
Jai?
Hello. I have a question.
Hi, Jai. Can you tell us where you're calling in from?
I'm calling in from outside Taos, New Mexico. It's beautiful out here.
Great. Wonderful. What's your question?
My question's for Arkan. In your book, The Time of the Black Jaguar, you mentioned several times the importance of tending the sacred fires. And I wonder if you could elaborate how to do that, and especially how someone would do that in an urban setting.
Good question.
Yeah, it's very difficult in an urban setting, but the truth is that everybody can make some plans and find the time for a weekend or one Saturday or Sunday to get out of the city and find a good way to do this. Thank you for your question, Jai. In nature, there are four beings or four sacred powers that have the capacity to light a fire. One is lightning, the other one is the sun, the other one is volcanoes, and the fourth one is us, the human beings. This is one of our talents, that we can light a fire. There is no other creature on earth that can do that, but we can do it. And since ancient times, we human beings have used fire to create sacred space, to call in the presence of that which is sacred. So in the previous question, I was talking about memory, about remembering to be part of the earth, to love the earth, to be directly connected to the earth. Well, your question is so appropriate because since very ancient times, we human beings have lit the fire as a way to reconnect with spirit, to remember that there is something sacred beyond all the little things that we usually worry about and stay busy through our lives, that there is something transcendent and beyond that is always there for us and calling us and inspiring us. So lighting a fire is one of the very special talents that makes us human beings. And sometimes we spend a long time without ever doing that, without ever remembering what it is to be a real human being, what it is to be someone who has the capacity to light a fire and call in for ourselves and for the earth and for all that we want to pray for, call in the presence of that which is sacred, that which is sacred power, as John said before, sacred power that can come from the spirit world to make a change here on the earth. What can people do if they live in an urban area? You know, it's very difficult for me to say because I live out in the country, but talk to the fire department and see how and where you can do it. Meet people who do it with ceremony of different traditions and have sacred spaces where they light sacred fires, and learn from them and be inspired by them. You know, there may be ways to do it. The most important is to really want to do it. And again, thank you for the question because it is very relevant. We human beings and millions of human beings need to recover the memory of what it is to be a real human being, to be a caretaker of life, and sitting in front of the fire in silence, just to pray and to see what is the dance of the flames is a really powerful way to do that. It's really all about regaining the memory of who we really are.
That's beautiful.
And
Thank you, Jai.
Excuse me, I want to add one more thing to that. You know what has replaced the fire? The TV.
TV.
So get
that
out
light shining.
So don't spend too much time in front of the TV and remember your ancestors from Africa, Asia, Native Americans, and Europe. Long time ago, they didn't have TV at night. They watched the fire. And then they had really good dreams that guided their lives.
I love that. I love that little addendum. I'm glad you added that little piece. Leah, do we have any more questions? I know we have quite a few.
Yeah, we do. Our next one comes from Detroit, Michigan, and it comes from Deetra Covington, and this is for John Perkins. And the question is, have you been able to work with corporations and moving from the head to the heart?
Yes, that's one of my great challenges and great joy, is to understand that corporations really control the world today, and yet we control the corporations. If we understand that the marketplace is a democracy, if we choose to make it such, that we, when there was apartheid in South Africa, we boycotted corporations that supported it, and that helped a great deal to get rid of apartheid. The rivers were terribly polluted in this country. We boycotted corporations that polluted them, got them to clean them up, got corporations to open the doors wider to women and minorities. Still a lot of work to do. But so I go into these corporations and I work with top executives and let them know that the future of their company, the future success stories are going to be those that will contribute to making this a better world, to creating a life economy. Talking with, for example, the heads of a company like General Dynamics that makes weapons, to say, hey, you need to get out of the weapon business and start making equipment and processes that will clean up the pollution of the oceans and the rivers and the air and the soil. This is the future. This is the shapeshift. And I find this to be a very exciting time and a very wonderful time to do that. And it goes along a little bit with the earlier discussions about connecting with nature. I encourage people in corporations to understand that the very buildings they work in are made from the earth. Cement comes from the earth. All steel comes from the earth. To try then to really feel the power of their connection with the earth. The first time I ever brought a shaman out of the Amazon into New York City, which was many years ago, I picked him up at the airport and got a cab. We were going to speak at the Open Center. Instead, I took him first to Central Park. And I decided to go over and admire the trees. No, he went right up to the biggest building across the street and leaned against it and said, this building has beautiful spirit. And I looked at him in awe. And I said, I don't think most of my people recognize that. And he said, do people live in this building? And I said, yes. And he said, they don't try to understand the spirit of the building? And I said, I don't think most of them do. And he said, they must be in trouble. So I think it's important for us to understand that it is all earth. And while it's wonderful to get out into nature, I try to encourage executives, when they're sitting in their offices, light a candle. There's a fire. Feel the fire in your heart. Feel the fire of the sun. And know that you are in nature and you are part of nature, and everything you do is impacting it. And I think I'm doing this with some success. I found that corporate executives often really relate to this. They have children and grandchildren. They don't want the world to be destroyed. Most of them. There are sociopaths there, but most of them are not. And they're just looking for ways to make this happen better. And we must help them. Send emails to Nike and tell them you love their products, but you're not going to buy them anymore until they do a much better job at taking care of their pollution and also treating their workers fairly and giving them a fair wage. They listen to emails. They respond to these things. We need to push, push, push. We really need to take responsibility and push.
Wow, beautiful. I just want to presence the fact that typically right now would be the time that we would move on and stop the Q&A, but we have such a list of people with so many questions. So I'm going to do this. One is also, what also happens at the end of these conversations is that we have a Facebook page where people continue to ask questions and the speakers answer. In this case, John is in Ecuador and Arkan is not on Facebook. And so I'm thinking that if it's okay with you, John, and with you, Arkan, if we go a little bit over and allow people to have time to ask more questions, if you're okay with that and if your time works. Does that work for you, John?
I have a problem because I have a group of people that are expecting me join them for a meeting to prepare them to go to the Amazon tomorrow. It's an important meeting.
Okay. Got it.
So if I could say, maybe I could say another 5 or 10 minutes, and if Arkan can stay longer, if there's any questions, maybe I could answer those first and then sign off. I'm sorry for this, but it is an important assignment here. I take it seriously.
Okay. Yeah, I'm only thinking like 5 or 10 more minutes after the hour. Arkan, does that work for you?
Yeah, I can stay longer. I'm okay with you.
Okay, great. So we're only looking at like 5 or 10 minutes. There's just a lot of questions. It's rich, and we're not going to have the opportunity on Facebook. So, Leah, let's just move. And who else do we have?
Great. I just want to say, Carrie Thompson, unfortunately, we can't take you off mute because of how you registered. But if you put your question in the Q&A, I can take it from there. And we're going to go on to Judith Dove.
To who?
Judith Dove.
Judith.
Hi.
Are you there, Judith?
Well, yeah, actually, this is Judy's husband, Darren.
Okay, Darren, where are you calling from?
We're in near Annapolis, Maryland.
Okay, brilliant. What's your question?
Well, not really a question. I would like to remind people that a lot of people think that we're spirits having a human experience, but a lot of people, the disconnect is that we are humans of the earth. My power comes from the earth. I was taught by a lot of healers that my power comes from above, and I found out that it doesn't. It comes from the earth. And that's where the disconnect is with people, that we're thinking that we're spirits more than we're human, and there's no balance there. And the other thing I would like is I would really like Arkan to talk more about the problem with gender, with the uneven gender, and how we can work that into our lives, because I think that that's really the problem with what's going on the planet, is that people are not balanced in their gender.
Can you just be a little bit clearer with that question? Are you talking about the power imbalance between male and female? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in Arkan's book, he talked a lot about it, and it made a lot of sense that because the male and the female aspects are not in balance.
Right.
The females, because the males aren't, stepping up to the plate, so to speak, they're acting more like men than they are women, and we need women. And the men are acting like idiots, and they're they're not understanding their true role. And that I see that around me as a big problem with with the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got the question. Arkan, can you comment on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I said earlier that it would be great to have the people who meet in offices and make business plans and all that to allow themselves to bring the heart into their conversation. Like John said, to light the fire in their heart when they do things like this, in order to not only be smart but be wise and make decisions that are good for the well-being of all life, including their own children and great grandchildren, and all those who are coming. So what the question is referring to is extremely important, because if the world continues to be run by a poor expression of what it is to be masculine and man, and continues to leave out the heart and the feminine intelligence and the feminine capacity to know what is really needed, we're going to continue going in the same direction we're going now, which I don't think we can afford to do for too long. So it is extremely important that men realize what it is to be a real man, and what it is to to take the role of someone to protect life and to take care of the actions that are required in order to save the planet and rebuild a good way of life for humankind. and that in order to do this, the only way to have the wisdom is to go on our knees again in front of the feminine and ask for forgiveness and ask the feminine to one more time give its wisdom and its capacity to know what is really needed. For example, when we do environmental work, let's say, people who are activists and want to help the earth, it is really important that there be a ton of feminine intelligence in that work that is required in order to have the intuition and the channels open to know exactly what the earth needs. So not to save the earth in a masculine paternalistic way, as if she would be an object that needs to be saved, but to be in communication with her and feel and know what is that she wants and what is actually that she is already doing in order to continue living and continue being a home for all the forms of life, including ourselves. So this question is very important. We need to reintegrate the feminine principle and all the wisdom that comes with it into human intelligence. Human intelligence has become lame because it is only appreciated when it is rational in a masculine way. And intuition and feminine feeling and feminine wisdom are not so well respected nowadays. Actually, in modern culture, in indigenous cultures, that change has not happened so drastically yet. In indigenous culture, there is still a lot of listening to the earth, to women, and to the feminine aspect that also lives in the heart of men.
Very nice. Thank you. Wonderful question. Leah, do we have another question?
We do. This is from Donald Leach, or Leach. I apologize if my pronunciation is incorrect. And this is for Arkan. And by the way, Arkan, he says that you will remember him from his dream about the deer walking backwards. And so that one thing that you taught is that our most direct connection to Pachamama is through the food that we eat. And he says, can you talk more about the spiritual connection to food?
I love these questions. We can go as long as you want with these questions. Yeah, thank you so much for reminding me. Many people ask, how can we reconnect with Pachamama if we cannot go to the forest, etc. And a very practical way that we have at least one time a day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, when we have the opportunity to reconnect with Pachamama is when we eat our food, because our food comes from Pachamama. And the action of sitting in front of that food and acknowledging that it came from her and giving her thanks and making a little offering in return, could be a song or could be putting a little bit of the food back on the garden or outside for the birds to take it. In some way, to have an action of relationship and reciprocity with the earth in that moment and say, Pachamama, you are nourishing me, you are giving me life. Without this water that I'm going to drink, I would die in a few days. Nobody can stay alive without drinking water. Food takes longer, but even that, if we don't eat, we will die. We don't have health. We don't have the nutrients. So the truth is, Pachamama, Mother Earth, is keeping us alive. Is giving us what we need. And the spirit of Pachamama, the love of Pachamama and her care for us is inside of that food. Her spirit is inside of that food. So every time we eat, we have the chance to make a deep connection with her. And in this sense, what I recommend is always do a prayer before eating, and don't eat and do business at the same time. Don't eat and go to your head by thinking a lot or asking questions or getting into conversations that will distract you from feeling the flavors and the power that is in the food that you are eating. This is a It's a form of communion. Spiritual communion is a sacrament. Every meal is a sacrament. And if we remember that, it really increases big time our relationship with the earth, and the earth will take care of us. She will make sure that we come back to her, that someone invites us to go for a weekend to a forest. She will move those things for us, as long as we keep talking to her and listening to her. Through the food is a really good way to do that.
Wow. I am so grateful for that question and for that answer. I think it's something that I think we all kind of grew up, most of us probably grew up saying your prayers before you eat, and it's dropped off so much. And I love that answer, because that is the place that we do every day, a couple of times a day, where we can go back to the source and we can remember and we can give thanks and we can connect. That was a beautiful, beautiful question and a beautiful answer. Thank you. Thank you so much. And before we close, I know we're going to come to a close now, because I know we can't go on forever, and I'm sure people have only scheduled an hour for this call. We're already over. But before we close, I want to let folks know that there's a survey that will be posted, that we're going to post right now on this platform, that is just really simple and easy, and we really would love for you to fill it out. It helps us tremendously to move forward, to know what works, what doesn't work, and it just helps us with what we're doing as we create this series and as we continue every month. So if you could take the time right now to fill it out as I'm speaking to you, that would really be so appreciated by the Pachamama Alliance and myself. So as you do that, I am going to have a very sad goodbye and say goodbye to our wonderful guests, to Arkan and John Perkins. You all, I feel like there's going to be a part 2. I think we need a part 2 on this one. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And so, John, I'm wondering if, starting with you, if you can give us your last wonderful words of wisdom of, something that we could take home, something that we can actually use, do, something practical, or just bless us in some way with your wisdom. Are you still there, John? Okay. Arkan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, yes.
Okay, I think we lost John. Can you give us your last words of wisdom? We really would appreciate that.
More or less, how long do I have to say these last words? A couple of minutes?
Yeah, I think we've got 2 minutes.
Okay. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. And even John is not there, I want to say it's always a big honor for me to be in these conversations with John Perkins. And I admire his work and all that he has done and is doing for the earth. And big gratitude also for Pachamama Alliance, and continue to be a big supporter of their work, and grateful for all that they do to save the rainforest in Ecuador. And my last words for the people who are listening, I just want to repeat a couple of things I said that I would love you to pass on to other people. Something that is creating a lot of damage in our world, and it seems that it's beginning to change, and we need to really help that change continue to happen. Is that idea that some of the people in the middle of this century and before that and after that, many people really got into the idea that the goal of life was to be successful. And the drive for success, unfortunately, has made many people forget their heart and forget the earth. And I'm not saying they don't have a heart. It's usually very good people who just ignore that there is a heart when they want to do what is necessary to do in order to reach success. So my prayer is that we arrive to a time when there's no more individual notion of success, that success is collective. Success is mitakuyeoyas, like we say in the Lakota language, to all my relations. All that I'm doing, all my efforts and the benefit and the fruits of all that I'm doing, may they be for the well-being of all life. And why do people look for success? Because they want to be happy. And I'm sure many of you already know, creating well-being for all life really creates happiness, true happiness. And having individual success, a lot of times it really doesn't. So we need to just remember some things and become wiser, incorporate some more feminine wisdom, some more earthly common sense, and go back to the path of what it is to be a real human being. Those are my... Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say this, and I wish well to everyone.
Arkan, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely beautiful. And John, I know if you're gone, I know that he's thanking everybody, and he's off into the jungle now doing the good work that Pachamama Alliance is all about. And so I just want to say that if there's a way to stay connected to this journey that we've been talking about, is to stay connected to the Pachamama Alliance. Mm-hmm. And you can sign up for a symposium, the Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream Symposium. It is a incredible 4-hour journey that I can't recommend enough. And you can find a symposium near you by going on the website, or you can watch a DVD online as well. And we also want to encourage you to please like us on Facebook. That always helps. And then our next event that we have in this incredible speaker series is going to be on August 14th. And we have an amazing, amazing visionary and activist, Vandana Shiva. So I will be in conversation with Vandana Shiva, calling in from India. And so we continue to have these conversations with thought leaders as we do our best to take care of the earth and the earth's people and to be good stewards. So I just want to thank everyone for being on this call today, this evening, wherever you are. It's been a wonderful conversation. And on behalf of the Pachamama Alliance, I just want to thank you for joining us and really hope that you join us again in the upcoming months. So I want to wish everyone, everywhere, and all future generations a thriving, just, and sustainable world. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again next month.